Bhakti can sometimes be translated as devotion, but the word devotion has certain connotations to it, and Bhakti is a larger subject. Bhaktas, or those who are absolutely steeped in the path of Bhakti, their reaction to Paramatma, their response, their love, all of this is well documented. It is explored through stories, through music, through dance. But how do people react to bhaktas? That's a very interesting concept to look at, because the power of bhakti is also it also spreads to the people around, and they're able to respond, receive that bhakti and react to it in very beautiful ways. So we look at one particular bhakta who Tulsidas has said that this bhakta's bhajanas move Rama himself. Tumhare bhajan Ram ko bhava hai. Of course, we are talking about Hanuman. And there are so many beautiful moments in the Ramayanam when Hanuman's bhakti to Sita and Rama is visible. But what about the others and their approach to Hanuman? To understand that, or even to understand, is it fair to say that Sita and Rama themselves are bhaktas of Hanuman? Let's explore some of these questions. We look into one beautiful moment from the Yuddhakandam, which is the war between Rama and Ravana, where Rama, Lakshmana and the entire Vanarasena have been caught by astras that Indrajit has used, Indrajit being the son of Ravana. Indrajit has certain supernatural powers, etc., etc. So these astras have bound everybody, and the entire Vanarasena is absolutely down with this, distressed with this, and they're not able to move. Many of them are in pain. Valmiki speaks about this in great detail in the Yuddhakanda. There are only two people who this astra does not work on. One is Vibhishana. Vibhishana, because he is Ravana's younger brother, he belongs to the same family, so the mantra has absolutely no prayogam, no effect on him. That is one. The second person is Hanuman, because Hanuman, when he was a child, he received a varam or a boon from the devatas that no astras would have any kind of effect on him. So these are the only two people that are free. So they are walking around, Vibhishana and Hanuman, and they're looking at the state of affairs. And it is at this time that Jambavan, the bear, Jambavan wakes up. Very painfully he gets up, because he's also in pain, but he's at least able to get up, and he comes towards Vibhishana and he asks him one question. He says, Vibhishana, is Hanuman okay? Vibhishana is a little surprised by this question, because one would think, as did Vibhishana, that the question that Jambavan should ask is Rama alright or is Lakshmana alright? But his question was not about them. His question was about Hanuman. So he says, Tata, I would expect you to ask about Rama or Lakshmana, but you are asking about Hanuman. At that point, Jambavan tells him, Vibhishana, if one Hanuman is alright, the entire Vanarasena will be okay. But if the entire Vanarasena is okay and Hanuman is not okay, there is no point, because we will all be gone. So this is the power of Hanuman in the Ramayanam. This is the power of a bhakta, that a bhakta is worshipped as the central figure around whom everyone else's sustenance depends. That idea comes across so beautifully in different places. In the Sundarakandam, we see towards the very end, when Hanuman is returned, his entire journey has been successful. When he comes back and he relays the information to Rama, Rama is of course beyond thrilled that Sita has been found and now they can plan how to reach her. At that point, he wonders, what can I give you, Hanuman, for the service that you have rendered me? What can I possibly give you? In this moment, I have only one thing to give you, my sarvasvam, my everything, and my everything is a hug for you. So he gives him a hug. That Ramanjaneya moment is a very beautiful moment from multiple perspectives. It's also symbolic of a mantra swarupam, where Rama is completely Vishnu or Hari, and Hanuman is completely Rudra or Hara. So this is also Harihara Swarupam. But it is also that beautiful moment between a bhakta and Bhagavan, where there is absolute love, and now bhakti becomes a two-way street, where Rama is as much as a bhakta of Hanuman is, or as Hanuman is of Rama himself. So in the Adhyatma Ramayana, we find a very beautiful conversation that happens between Hanuman and Rama, where Rama finally asks Hanuman, Hanuman, who are you? And this is from the philosophical perspective that Hanuman answers this question. And Hanuman says, when considered from the perspective of the body, I am your dasa. Dasa is not to be translated as slave. When considered from the perspective of the mind, I am a part of you. But when considered from the perspective of the Atma, you and I are the same. This is what I feel. Now this slokam reads very beautifully. It says, Deha buddhya tu dasoham, jiva buddhya tadamshakaha, atma buddhya tvamevaham itime nishchita matihi. And this slokam captures the essence of the three different schools of Vedanta as well. It refers to Dvaita, Vishishtadvaita and Advaita, and it also is a hint of how Hanuman is a principal figure in all these three particular schools. But also, it is a moment of absolute acknowledgement that when the bhakta is in love with something or some form or some energy, that energy and the bhakta at some point are absolutely not different. So this idea is also communicated through a story, that a bhakta is celebrated because of that oneness, because of the power of his love. The Ramayanam concludes with a Pattabhishekam of Rama, which is the coronation. Because the Uttarkanda remains after that, but the Pattabhishekam is the crowning jewel of the epic, pun intended. And so the Pattabhishekam is about Rama's coronation. So the entire detail is given about how Rama is bathed in the waters of the seven seas, all the rivers from across Bharatavarsham, etc. And then he's seated with Sita, Vame, Bhumi Sutta, etc. But the Pattabhisheka Ghattam, that particular sarga of the Yuddhakanda, it comes towards it is the last chapter of the Yuddhakanda in the Ramayana. That does not conclude with this. It concludes with the Sabha, where Rama is seated with Sita, all of them, Lakshmana, Jambavan, all of Rama's brothers, everybody is there, Shatrughna, Bharata, etc. But it does not conclude with this. What it concludes with is that Rama has then gifted each of the Vanaras who have been so supportive to him during his entire Vanavasam. He has gifted them something as a token of his love. The Sabha doesn't finish here. Nobody wants to get up because they're all observing to see what is it that Rama is going to give Hanuman. At that point, Rama looks at Sita, and Sita looks at her own neck, and she looks at a particular necklace. This necklace has been fashioned by her in-laws and has come, some of the gems have come from her own maternal home, and it was put on her by Rama. So it's a very special necklace to Sita. So she takes that necklace off her, she looks at Prabhu, and he says, Ramachandra Prabhu says, give this to someone who you think is most deserving of it. Who else is most deserving of that? But why we mentioned that particular necklace is that necklace has Rama and Sita both in it, and she places it on Hanuman's neck. Contrary to popular belief, Hanuman does not tear it apart and look into each of it. That is not a story that comes in the Valmiki Ramayana. Hanuman is absolutely delighted that he has received Sita Rama Prasadam, and he's thrilled. But if you look from the story perspective, the Pattabhisheka Ghattam is all about Rama, but Rama's Pattabhishekam or Rama's coronation concludes with felicitating Hanuman. So Rama Pattabhishekam in some senses or in all senses concludes with Hanumat Sanmanam. So the idea that Bhakti is the most celebrated jewel, that is the power of Bhakti, that it has the power to move Bhagavan to untold heights and to untold emotions. So that is why it felt like an appropriate idea to explore.